What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Welcome everybody, and welcome to the Awakening World. It's Friday night, March 25th, and we have a really beautiful series of shows planned this weekend on an incredibly important topic that we all have to deal with it, whether or not we want to, and that's the topic of death. And so tonight and throughout this weekend, we're going to be exploring a lot of different aspects around death, how to prepare for it, how to deal with it. We've got Death Doulas, a woman from Green Burials, people who have experienced near-death experiences. And we're going to really have a dynamic, honest conversation. And we want for all of you to participate in that. So, first off, I want to welcome everybody that's already in our Zoom room. We've got about 35 people that are already here. As always, let us know your name, where you're from, and right off the bat, what thoughts, comments, questions you might have about death or dying. I also want to welcome everybody who's watching on Facebook or on the YouTube channels that carry us. And thank you to the Sign Network, John and Summer Raymer, for putting us out over sometimes as many as 100 different Facebook groups and pages. And also a big welcome to all of our friends watching on Unify and also on Alan Steinfeld's YouTube channel. You know what? You all can come on into our Zoom room. And that's a great way for us to interact a little bit more easily with you. I do check and see what's happening on Unify, but if you come into our Zoom room, you can interact with us more easily. And it's easy to do that. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, and register, and you will get the links for all three of our shows. We do a show Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday. All three shows for the next 3 months, all the way through till the end of June. So come on in and join us. We have a remarkable group of people with us, but right off the bat, I always want to start by introducing my co-host for almost 2 years now. It's Trish.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to your Friday night edition of The Awakening World. I almost said the I'm really, really, really excited to talk about death and to bring in this topic because I've spent so much time recently, like aspecting or becoming my own version of death and to really dance with that experience. And I'm so excited about our guest tonight, as well as, one of our guests is one of my dearest friends. So I'm excited to share her with you. So.
Right. Thank you. And, I'm going to ask each of our guests, as I introduce them, just to share an opening thought, an opening statement, and then we're going to get right into questions and answers. And wait till you see, we've got really a remarkable group of people. The first guest that I am going to introduce you to, you've seen her on Saturday Night Live, and it's Lisa Garr. And Lisa, of course, is the host and creator of The Aware Show, which has been the leading transformational radio show about natural health, cutting edge science, personal growth, and spirituality since 1999. I've been aware of it for a long, long time. And so thank you, Lisa, for all that you've done. And I've invited her especially for this show because part of her life journey is that she had a tragic brain trauma. And she kind of went through that process, found her voice, and became this incredible voice of change for the world. She's a remarkable speaker. She's reached over 40 million US television households with the Aware Show podcast. They get over 10,000 downloads a month. She's she's famous, and she's on our show tonight. And we love Lisa Garr. So
I think you're amazing. I mean, as a broadcaster for over 20 years, what you are doing here it is a calling, isn't it?
it is. It is absolutely. And
Every Friday night and Saturday night and Sunday morning, and even sometimes in the afternoons, you just have this desire, and I see you, and I see your heart, and my mission is very much aligned with yours to communicate information that inspires positive growth and change. And this is, yes, I see you, my friend. And
you, Lisa, thank you.
yeah, it's something that just you can't not do it. And especially now when, I mean, people have always been seekers, always lifelong learners. And I love, that's who I am. I'm a lifelong learner. So when I, hear the wonderful people that are on the panel tonight, I just see the gem in each one of their offerings, their communication. I can see how I'm a practical person, so I can see how it applies to my phase in life, your phase in life. So I feel this is a very important topic, and you have done such a wonderful job of orchestrating different perspectives from all different walks of life and different perspectives on death. And so thank you for having us here and demystifying this concept and bringing it to this very valuable conversation. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you, Lisa. Yeah. One thing I wanted to just riff on is, can you relate to the idea that this is the time we've been preparing for our entire lives? This incredible time in human history. And so I think that's why, I mean, we have been in this world a long time of transformational media, but this is really it. It's like, humanity is at a really big turning point.
It's a good thing in a way because people are waking up all over the world. And the only way we're going to be able to uplift humanity, no judgment, unconscious or unconscious, the only way we're going to do that is if we have enough people collectively with the intention to uplift humanity. And that's how we can get into the darker pockets of the world. And that's how we can really start to, as light workers, as those who are called to that commitment to consciousness, lift everyone up, because we are that tide that rises all boats. And there's a segment of our world that's in deep, deep need of our biofield right now. Collectively, we need each other to pull up and lift people that are fleeing for their lives in other countries and in our own. So yeah, this is a really important time to be doing the work we're doing and to empower every single light worker out there.
Beautifully stated, Lisa. Just, gosh, I love how you speak. And as you mentioned, we have some remarkable people. Let's meet our other guests tonight. And of course, we'll be back with Lisa in a little bit. Here is Jerry Lynn Grace and Jerry Grace Lyons. I apologize, Jerry Grace Lyons. And to be honest, she was just referred to me a few days ago. And when I read about all that she was doing, I was like, oh my God, if we can get her on the show. And we're really grateful that such short notice, Jerry Grace agreed to be with us. She's the founder and the director of Final Passages. It's a nonprofit organization since 1995. She's a death educator, doula, author, minister, and even a Reiki master. And through her institute, she's created a 3-tiered educational program that's teaching people, including all of us tonight, about conscious dying, home funerals, and green burial options. And she's guided 450 family-led home funerals. So welcome, Jerry Grace, and thank you for being with us. One of the people you're going to meet in a moment, Deborah, when she found out we had dinner with Deborah last night, and she said, "Oh my God, Jerry Grace Lyons! Oh my God, I was so excited." So you come with much love and much adoration. You'll see Deborah in a moment. Tell us, what's kind of your opening thought that you'd like to share about this topic?
Scott, thank you so much for having me on, and it's a great privilege to be able to be on the show. I've watched many Saturday night shows that you've created, and they're so beautiful, bringing so many different hearts and minds and spirits together.
Thank you. Thank you.
And yeah, my journey in the world of death and dying, it came, I didn't really seek it out, except that about 7 years before I began this journey, I was in Hawaii with my daughter, and I was invited to a puja ceremony, and there was a giant crystal there, and we were invited to go up to the crystal and ask for prayers of whatever we wanted to happen in life. So besides asking for peace for everyone in the world, I also asked to find a vocation or a path of work that would be of service to others and would bring me some kind of fulfillment in that service as well, so that, I felt I was doing something to make a difference in the world. And that was that. And then 7 years fast forward, a dear friend of mine who's a Reiki master and a nurse, she died suddenly. And she had left instructions for us to take care of her body in a very intimate setting in her home, and to wash her and dress her and do ceremony with her. And that awakened me to a whole new world of caring for somebody at the time of death. Something I'd never considered, something I didn't know was legal. None of us did, but my friend Carolyn, the nurse, had researched it and found out it was in fact legal for families to take care of their own. And when you think of it, it is something that should be a right for every family to do. And so after the experience of caring for her, which just completely transformed me, it was my initiation into the work. And she became my mentor on the other side. That started me on this path. So what I've realized through the years of doing this work, 26 at least, is that really the path has always been there for us. It just grew over with weeds. And we're just clearing that path for others as we show them, remind them how this work is done, and all the beauty that comes with it.
For sharing that. Thank you. And I'm just so grateful to have you with us. And we have two more people to meet that are part of this incredible evening. And to tell us about our other two guests, I'm turning over to Trish.
I'm delighted to introduce Linda Starwolf. Linda Starwolf has had several I'm excited. I trip over my tongue when I'm excited. Let me try that again. Linda Starwolf has had several near-death experiences, a drug overdose in the 1970s, an adverse medication reaction in 2007, and was struck by lightning in 2018. She has published 12 books, including her most recent, Shamanic Breathing, and she is the director, founder of Venus Rising Association for Transformation and Venus Rising University. Welcome.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be on tonight, and quite unexpected. What a beautiful surprise. And we're right in the process right now here in the mountains of North Carolina. There's a lot of winds tonight, ill winds. So hopefully the internet is stabilizing, but we're right in the process of a 2-week intensive at this very moment with people from all over the world. And we just finished about 30 minutes ago. So it's a very intense evening, and I'm happy to be here with all of you. And I feel really honored to be with such esteemed kindred spirits. And thank you, Scott, for carrying this message, especially now. Especially now.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We decided to do this topic because, let's face it, so many of us are having to face death in different ways. We might be facing it because of friends of ours that are passing, because we're getting older. Every single person listening is one day older than they were yesterday. We're all getting older. But then also reading about what's going on in Europe, where, this death is in our reality in a really significant way. So thank you for being with us, and looking forward to learning more about your amazing breath work, a little practice you're going to take us through. And I am going to go back to Trish, though, and give Trish an opportunity to introduce her girlfriend.
I'm so excited to introduce Deborah Chapman. And I've known Deborah for 5 years, 4 or 5 years? I'm not sure. Time doesn't live correctly for me. And if you just want to know, she's an amazing human. And Deborah Chapman is a death doula, minister, grief companion, and co-founder of Death Transitions, a collective of death workers in Northern California. Deborah passionately explores serving end of life through her relationships and as a hospice volunteer and employee, holding those through life and death transition and companioning communities and individuals through loss is the gift that keeps on giving. And Deborah, thank you so much for not only being on my show the day after that my dad died, and just being my friend and holding that space for me. So thank you so much.
I'm honored to be here with all of you. And, I applaud you guys bringing this topic out into the greater audiences and normalizing death and having death positive conversations. And I appreciate each and every one of you for showing up and being vulnerable and giving space to all the people you give space to and comfort in their times of death and grieving. So I just had dinner with Scott and Trish last night. And I think I'll be holding the position, my conversations on how to support those through grief and, my love affair with grief, because it is one of my best teachers. So I look forward to the conversation, everyone. Thanks for having me.
I'm also going to drop this show that you did with me around grief and how to hold a loved one who's grieving loss in the chat box. So if anybody wants to watch it after this, it was amazing.
All right, so I am bringing on board everybody so we can, see all of our friends. And again, thank you all for being with us. So I'm going to open up with a question which any of you can answer. For those of us who might have fear of death, right? And I want to acknowledge anybody who has that, It might be fear of what's going to happen when I die. It might be fear of pain of death. It might be fear of, losing this beautiful body that I know I'm pretty attached to my body. So I just want to open up by asking any of you for thoughts and specifically maybe tools or practices for really managing fear of death. Anybody want to tackle that initially?
Well, I'll speak into it, Scott. In the past 7 years, my husband passed from cancer, and I was with him and guided him through the last days and moments of his life. And then in 2020, in April, my 91-year-old father passed, and I went to be with him and was with him and guiding him with his last breath. And both my late husband and my father, and I've been with others before, but this was just in the past 7 years, both of them were talking to people on the other side that are no longer with us in those last few moments. They were speaking their names, they were looking at me, but they were looking through me. And as I was with them, both times I asked, are there other people here? And they would make some sort of recognition about that. And then eventually, when that happened, I really calmed down at that moment and stopped trying to save their lives anymore. I really understood that the journey now was to hold space for them to walk through that door. And in both cases, I saw this beautiful energy, and I'm sure that Deborah and others could really speak into this. But in both of those cases, with the two of the men that I've loved the most in my life, and didn't want them to leave, didn't want them to leave their beautiful bodies. I knew that that wasn't my decision anymore. It wasn't my space to be holding them here. What I was to be there with them and to simply be more like a midwife, and step into that role and just tell them to breathe and encourage them to breathe. And in both cases, and that's what I do, I've been doing for 40 years, is shamanic breath work. In both cases, I encourage them to just breathe. And they both automatically started doing that, what people maybe refer to or think of as the kind of the breath of death, of starting to breathe faster and faster and faster. And then eventually taking that last breath and releasing and letting go, and just watching that last breath as they left. And the beautiful, really look that came over both of their faces. So there's this, I guess for myself, and even though I've had near-death experiences, this is different. For me, I could really see when that happened, the great release and freedom that they were experiencing, and that neither one of them had the fear of leaving. And that's made a profound impact on me. It's made a profound impact on me in the sense that I feel like that, and of course I won't know until I'm there, but I feel like that I really have a trust in death and birth and rebirth now in a way that I haven't before. I've had problems with being an early birth and almost dying as a being born. And I've had some near-death experiences, and I've held people in my arms as they're leaving, and I've held my grandchildren as they were being born. So there's this beautiful, really synergy between birth, death, and rebirth that feels like life doesn't really stop. It just shifts. It just changes to another dimension.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you.
I'll kind of chime in there too, because from my experience, and I did have a near-death experience through this complete shift in consciousness, where I don't know if it was another dimension or a different part of my brain I accessed or whatever it was. My body was failing and it was being lifted into a helicopter and taken to the hospital, but I didn't feel the body at all. All I experienced was this incredible state of oneness with all that is. And the lack of boundaries and the complete, I remember feeling like being the top of a tree swaying with wind, not resisting, but becoming the wind, becoming the tree. And I felt this incredible relationship with all that is connected. And once I experience that, I can never unexperience that. It's for me, it has helped me personally let go of the fear of death. If it's anything like that, it's absolutely beautiful. And I just share my experience like that, because if it was me going to death and back, it is a seamless experience. Even though my body was severely damaged and my brain was severely injured, I had this incredible experience, and it was absolutely beautiful. And all I can do is share that with people, to maybe give you an idea of that the soul experiences what the soul can experience. And there are many other people that I have interviewed about the shared crossing projects, and Raymond Moody and so forth, where they go into the crossing with another and come back. And this is now starting to be studied and replicated and researched. And it's the exact same experience that I felt that they're describing. So I just wanted to share that as a different perspective. That helps.
I'm really glad you did. I was actually kind of looking for one of you to share, because you've experienced leaving the body. You're not sharing a philosophy or something that you've studied. You're sharing an experience you had of what it feels like to die. And I know that Lisa, both you and I have interviewed a lot of Raymond Moody. Daniel Brinkley's going to be on tomorrow, a lot of near-death experience people. And everyone always describes it's the word that's common is liberation. Liberation from the body, remembering, oh, that's right, I'm a multidimensional being, right?
Yes.
You know, and it's a gift, a blessing to have had that experience, to have that experiential knowing that we are multidimensional, that we're not just this body.
I'll just, one more thing. There was
Yeah.
someone who beautifully shared, Omashar, that his mother is an atheist, and that he is, has an incredible faith. And I'll just share with you, my father, scientist, surgeon, fairly atheistic in his perspective. And he said to me before he passed, he said, I don't know how to do this. Do I just pull the covers up over my eyes and it's over? Because he didn't have that relationship. And oh God, that was such a beautiful, bittersweet experience for me to hear him say. And I will tell you that he has connected. This is my cat. But he has connected very strongly with me since then. And I guarantee you he's experienced, despite his atheism, he's experienced this incredible sense of afterlife. So I don't know if it even really matters, my friend. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much. You know, I'm going to go to you in a moment, Jerry Grace. I'm going to kind of set you up with a question. Many of my regulars know that I've had a lot of death in my life. I walked my father through his death when I was 22. I walked my mother through her death. She lived with me in hospice for the last 6 weeks of her life. And then my wife passed away, literally died in my arms. And we experienced, as my wife died, I had about a dozen friends with me, and we could feel her liberation. I mean, it was amazing. It was so fascinating because it was, on the one hand, my wife was dying, which is obviously not what I wanted to have happen. But on the other hand, I was so connected to her, I could feel her liberation. And we had a friend who knew how to actually bring in dry ice. The women that were there bathed her and washed her and put oils on her. And then we put her in dry ice, and she stayed here in the house for 3 days. We never sent her to a funeral home. People who wanted to come see her came and saw her in her home, in our home here. And then we had her cremated. And it was this was 10 years ago, so it was fairly new. You know, a lot of people had never experienced that. And so this is all a lead up to you, Jerry Grace. I've only had one home burial, but I'm going to turn it over to you to share a little bit more about where we are now going with green burials and home burials and some of the options that are available.
Well, that's a great question. Back 28 years ago when Carolyn died, I really didn't, nobody knew about home funerals. In fact, that wasn't even a term people used. That was something that my friend and I came up with a term when we wrote our guidebook to help people who wanted to know how to guide somebody or be with somebody who died. And we just had to come up with some new terminology because people had forgotten. It's been too many generations since everyone took care of their own. Yet at one time, everyone knew how to do this. This is nothing new. It's just that we had gotten away from it. And now we're reclaiming it. And it's empowering people in such a beautiful way. So that saying, it's one starfish at a time that the person threw back in the ocean. It was one family at a time that was willing to and have the courage to say, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to keep our loved one at home and have you help us, kind of walk us through what to do. And so one at a time over the years, and people started referring people to us, and I learned how to help families file paperwork and how to purchase dry ice, how to do the ceremony in whatever way they wanted to, because they became my teachers too. I've learned so much from each family that I've helped. It's such a joy, such blessing to watch families go through the same transformation I did with Carolyn. Every one of them, almost at the end of it, come out saying, I can't imagine doing it any other way. Because it's so personal and so intimate and compassionate, and it's their person. They get to do it however they want in the comfort of their own home. So it's just an incredible thing to watch families and choose whichever option they want after their 3 days or 2 days. That's up to them too. So I'm just there to meet whatever needs they have. And then they get to choose if they want to do cremation or have a green burial. And that's another thing we can do because we've been doing this so long in Sonoma County. We know all the places where people can have a green burial, what crematoriums are opening their arms to families who want to care for their own loved ones at home. Not everybody is welcoming that. So we've had a chance to really find out all the ways people can buy beautiful shrouds. We know where they can buy them already made if they don't want to make their own. They also decorate the caskets, and that's so great to watch because it's a form of art therapy that helps them through their grief. So they can write poems, put pictures on the inside of the casket for the person. It's just, it's a grand experience to watch how each one does it. So I'm just there as a death doula or a death midwife and helping them through the process in whatever way I can help.
And we're going to, of course, let all of our audience know how to reach you and all of our other guests. And I think next time we come to you, I'd love to see that video that you talked about.
Okay.
I'm going to put the spotlight back on Deborah Chapman, because Deborah, you said something we don't normally hear: a love affair with grief. Now, that's a phrase that's not common. Tell us about that.
Well, I have had the fortune to experience a lot of death in my life, which brought me on my path to being a death doula. And, initially in the younger years, I shied away from grief, or in our society, we kind of just pushed it away. And the way that our death industry is set up, it really is created to have people avoid a relationship with grief. We dive right into the paperwork or the funeral arrangements. And so that's the place that our society has placed on a lot of us when we lose someone. So I have had the good fortune to have space to really develop a relationship with my grief. And, I've experienced a lot of deaths that are traumatic deaths. They're suicides, murders, and drug overdoses. And I don't think that's very common for most people. So I've had a cascade of loss that brought me, I couldn't shy away from my grief, nor could I shy away from death. And for me, grief is an initiation. And it brings us closer to our truth. And it helps us analyze our relationship with ourselves, with love in general, and the people around us. And for those of us that are allowed space to actually grieve or have support systems and community, whatever that looks like, grief is as individual as the person themselves. It is a beautiful teacher, and it continues to be a beautiful teacher. We integrate grief in every day. You don't get over grief. So I made friend with my grief.
I love it. I want to share a little experience, if I can, about I don't know what happened when one of my friends died, but she sort of like downloaded something for me. My friend Andrea, I got the call on Facebook, and I drove down immediately. And the next morning I spent the whole day with her, and she was really lucid. We had a great time. We laughed and we joked. And when we left, my partner at the time said to her, you know, my spiritual teacher said that when you have cancer, that's what she had, that you're burning off a lot of karma. And she looked at me and she looked at him. She goes, oh, yeah. And it was maybe an hour after that she passed away. And I don't know what happened exactly, but my relationship with death completely changed. The way that I looked at it, the way that it felt in my body, it became like a friend, right? And my dad died in November, and it was really interesting the way that my body, like, I didn't think about it. I just chose to be in my body with it, with the feeling of how he reorganized from this like conscious place in the library of my existence or my brain, and then he went to a different place in the library. I physically felt him reorganize inside of my body. Does this make sense? No, it might not, but and that was the part that was really, that was the weirdest feeling. You know, I've been doing a lot of Gestalt work, which is a lot of aspecting or communicating or dialoguing with places of self or pieces of self or another person. And I dropped back into my body in the middle of a Gestalt dance workshop, which was really fascinating to wake up again from being in this state of grief, which I really didn't have a name for it because it felt normal, but I also was in this dance. And what I find really fascinating to have all of you on now is that I spent last week in the same workshop, but it was all about aspecting or dialoguing with death. And so for me, and I'm going to pass it on in a minute, is that I spent an entire week becoming the impermanence, becoming change, and letting it speak to me and speaking as it and dancing with it. And I found death specifically, being a very sensual experience, that there was something that I had never experienced before around how the way that the body and the mind kind of connect is just a really, it's like the spiritual softest touch. And I'm wondering if anyone can share any information or help me gather my thoughts on that. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Well, to me, it sounds like you were integrating grief right after your father. You know, how you felt like he was reorganizing himself within you. To me, that sounds like integration and walking in a different way with your beloved that is now gone. That is what I get from that conversation, so that I can think of.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Trish. I'm going to read a few comments. We're beginning to get comments and questions from our audience, including a very powerful question I'm going to ask everybody in a moment, but a few comments. Melinda writes, my father died in my arms, and it was a beautiful spiritual honor. The light and love in the room was otherworldly. Part of that experience has stayed with me since. And yeah, that's the thing. It's like, as Trish is describing, or like Melinda just wrote, we all integrate the death of our loved ones in different ways. George wrote, I've heard grief described as a form of praise. And Noel wrote, after listening to you, Deborah, he wrote, Deborah, that really resonated with me. Grief can crack us open to touch the depths of ourselves and to touch the divine. As Rumi said, Rumi spoke of our heart breaking open, the pathway of the broken heart, which leads to a difficult question. Talk about the breaking of a heart. From Unify, Jill is with us, and Jill writes that she needs help. My son was murdered. I've cried every day since he died last year. The pain in my heart at times is overwhelming. She did have a few dreams of him shortly after he died, and she is asking for any support or any advice. And of course, it's kind of unimaginable for any of us to imagine what it's like to have your own son murdered. But do any of you want to offer a thought?
Can I speak to that a bit? I don't consider myself well versed in child loss. I'm not a mother, but I just wanted to share maybe looking up Amy Wright Glenn, Birth, Breath, and Death. She's done a lot of incredible work specifically around child loss, and she has resources, but Jerry might know more than me.
Yeah, I agree with you, Deborah, on that recommendation. She has taught at a workshop at a conference workshop that I was at, and she is really at the top.
Tell us your name again so I can put it in the chat box.
It's Amy Glenn Wright. Birth, Death, Breath, I think is what it is. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts that anybody wants to? And I know that, again, it's impossible for us to imagine, but is there anything anybody else would like to offer up?
I'm just going to say that I've helped some families who have experienced a murder child several times. It's unfathomable. It's hard to take in. Leaves everybody in shock. The act of caring for their body helped people through that grief. The deepest of grief, certainly it doesn't end after a home funeral or families caring for their own. The grief goes on at the deepest level, and all I can say is it breaks people's heart wide open, and coming to terms with that is, I don't know. I don't have the perfect answer at all. It's losing our child, and in such a violent way, is beyond what most of us can bear. And yet people do bear it. And in fact, some people will take that death and grow out of it some organization or community that somehow helps other people. That person will go out and assist others who have been through the same thing, form a community to walk together through it.
Thank you, very nice. I'm going to go to Linda Starwolf, because she had offered to do a practice, and this might be a really good time for a little sage and for that practice that you had offered up. So I think this is a good timing.
I did want to make a comment on what was just shared, and that I've been a psychotherapist for 40 years. And in that time, of course, many tragedies have come across into my life, and working with people who've lost loved ones in many ways, many violent ways, and those kinds of things. And I also heard that that in this situation and other situations, that oftentimes the person that has passed will come into our dreams. Sometimes people will say, well, that's just me dreaming or just making it up or whatever. And I don't think that that's true. I work from the shamanic world, and I really believe with my whole life that what death is just like going into another room, and that the person, that their energy, even though they may change in some ways, that the essence of who they are still cares about the people that they were in relationship with, they have karmic connections with, and that when they come to us in dreams and visions, that many times there's something that they're a message that they're wanting to get to us or to console us. And in the shamanic world, it's said that they actually now become our ancestors, even if they're younger than us, even if they're our children or our grandchildren or, a younger relative, that they now become ancestors, that the fathers, the mothers, when they pass over, they are now the ancestors. They're the ones who've completed this earth journey for now. And that they're just in another room. They're just in another space, and that they can still help. They can still offer support. They can still bring us messages. And if there's something that's undone for them, for whatever reason, sometimes they'll let us know that. And that there is a ritual or a ceremony or something that we can actually do to help them complete something. So that's just part of something I wanted to bring in, especially in a violent death. And so I just wanted to bring forth and bring some smudge into the room. And probably most people here know what this is, but just in case, if you don't, it's not illegal. It's not anything. We're not going to smoke this. This is smudge, and this is some sacred sage. And I also chose tonight some that also has what's called dragon's blood, which is actually a sap from a tree that was removed carefully and placed into it. So it's an extra strong energy, and it's the right kind of sage to use tonight for this particular, or this evening for this particular subject. So I'm burning a little bit of sage, and I've also have a feather from the swan, which is about surrender and peace and grace. Seems like an appropriate feather to use for this evening. And to all of my esteemed colleagues here, brothers and sisters, and all those who are with us this evening, wherever you are, just sending this smoke to you in a world that is in such amazing turmoil right now and in the birth canal. I think it was Lisa that spoke about that. We're in the birth canal right now, and we're hoping for a live birth. But that does mean that we're going to need to go through some death in order to rebirth. So for all of us, everywhere, whether it's around on the other side of the world in Ukraine and Russia and all over our world, for all those who are suffering and for all those who are supporting those who are suffering, we send this smudge tonight. We send this sacred smoke. May you take a breath and smell it right now. If you could just take a breath. And we put into the fire, we put into the smoke, whatever it is that we would like to release, any judgments, any fears. I believe in embracing all those things so we can transform them into places of power, right? Yeah. But the release of whatever needs to leave, we let it go. And we call in the new energies, because death and rebirth are kissing cousins. They're brothers and sisters. They're twin energies. And we don't get one without the other. If we want to rebirth this world, then much has to die at this time. And Scott, would this be the time for me to take us into just a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes of breathing together, or not?
Yes, I think that would be perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to hope that I have this on okay. So you can wave at me if the music is playing, and if it's not, you can do one of these. But what I teach is shamanic breath work, and I'll say more about that later if I have an opportunity. You don't really need to know about it to do it. We all know how to breathe. But what I'm going to ask you to do is breathing, which you mouth to breathe it fully in just a moment. Practice for a moment. Breathing into your nose and then out through your mouth to that depth, okay? So that's what it will look like. And I'm going to put some music on that will help activate you and make you want to breathe like that. And in just a moment of doing that, you will move into an altered state. And to see if you can keep that up for at least a minute or 2 or 3 minutes, you don't have to do it the entire time. But the music has also been choreographed. And also it has some different shamans and people that I've worked with that have put the music together. So the music itself is choreographed to work with the breath and to work with shape-shifting consciousness. And specifically to allow ourselves to go through a little mini death and rebirth. So I'm going to invite everybody that's on to think of something or to just let it intuitively come, if you don't know what it is when you're breathing, that you know in your heart that you need to let go of, that you need to, whether it's a relationship with a person or place or a thing or an idea or whatever, that you know that this moment is a good day to die. We've already heard from everybody here, it's safe, right, Lisa? It's safe, right? Everybody, it's death is absolutely safe. So that to go into this and allow something in this moment, if we choose, we don't have to, but at least we might be getting ready to let it die. And then to see it or feel it or sense it leaving and feel it, whatever comes up around it, fear, grief, sadness, anger, whatever. Don't shut those things out. Okay? I don't see them as negative. Allow ourselves to feel those things. And as they're leaving, to open ourselves up, in addition to those feelings, what are the other feelings that come once we begin to release? Okay? So let's begin by breathing. And I'm going to see if I can get this music on here. It's called Spiraling In. It's a spiral path. And begin to breathe. And if you could wave at me, Scott, and tell me when you can hear the music.
Not hearing the music yet. Now we hear it, but it's very low. That's good.
Can you hear it? Okay. Breathe. You can close your eyes or leave them open, whatever you choose.
Fortunately, Linda Starwolf's internet's cutting in and out. But I think let's all just continue to breathe for a moment or two. And again, for anybody who wasn't able to hear her direction because of the internet wobble, The idea is for us just to keep breathing. And as we breathe, really feeling our connection to our body and our connection to life, because breath is life. We come into this world with our first breath. We leave this world with our last breath. And so even when we're practicing breathing, we are able to kind of get back into that understanding of the cycle of birth and death. That even every inhale is bringing in life, and every exhale is like a little baby death. So just kind of practicing that for another minute. Starwolf, I actually muted you because the sound of the internet connection wasn't working so well. But I'll bring on all of our other friends who are breathing and practicing. Thank you. And love to have people put into the chat box anything they want to share. And I'm going to go to my partner, Trish, to kind of hear a little bit about your experience here.
I love shamanic breath work. I've done it before, and I mean, I love all types of transpersonal, like psychedelic sort of breath work, holotropic and rebirthing and all of that. So yes to this practice. I also spent a lot of time 2 weeks ago doing shamanic breath work, so thank you. I love the invitation to really bring in that heavier breath. Because what it does, it moves the lymph and also just helps you connect with your spirit in such a way. So even that little bit, it's so easy to connect like that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Starwolf. Thank you. And hopefully your internet will come back on in a better way. I'm going to go to Lisa Garr for a moment, because we haven't heard from Lisa for a bit. And I'd love to kind of hear your perspective. We've talked a lot about personal human death, but we've also very briefly alluded to what's going on our planet. And because you have all these amazing speakers and presenters, what do you have to say about kind of death as it relates to what's going on our planet right now?
I have been having some very incredible conversations around what's happening on our planet right now. And I will remember a couple of weekends ago, I was hosting Coast to Coast as one of the shows I host, and I had Marianne Williamson on, and we were talking about this portal, essentially, that crisis is a portal for transformation. And if we really look at what's happening right now in our world, this pretty much like 99% of the people are united on the feeling that Ukraine is absolutely needing our help and is absolutely needing our aid and absolutely needing our prayers. And that this is the opportunity. In the last several years, we've been so divided, and many people have in different segments. And this is the thing that is bringing us together in a united way, this crisis, which is offering this portal for us to go into, to actually experience unity after several years of division. And so in the context of this conversation around death and rebirth and death and rebirth, one of my wonderful mentors, Michael Tamura, who you will have on in this context, talks about death and rebirth being a commencement, a graduation into a next phase, a next level. And many of the people that I have been interviewing are saying this same thing about death being or crisis even being a commencement into the next level. So right now we have this opportunity to go into a place of incredible unity by being united on a topic, on a conversation, on a humanitarian conversation. And in terms of the of the death and the birth, look at that. What ways can we put to end a conversation around division and rebirth a conversation around unity, around humanity? I mean, humanity is a uniting conversation. It is a rebirth. It is, and to constantly have to rebirth ideas of ways of existing. I mean, many of the surrounding countries are taking in, even the US are going to be taking in the people that are fleeing from their homeland, while others stay behind to fight in Ukraine. And this is going to be a brand new birth, a new way of life for them. They won't be able to go back to their homeland for a long time. And we will adopt new ways of living with people that are from a war-torn country in this day and age. So I think we're in the middle of an incredible opportunity of a birth and death. If you really look at this on a grander scale, Scott, and I appreciate what Starwolf you did with us. That breathwork is very powerful, and I'd love to have access to the music or something that we could find that we could do that practice. So yes, Barbara Marx Hubbard also said that crisis is a portal. So it's an opening, it's a perspective shift, it's an opportunity to move into something different.
So beautifully stated, thank you. And after every show, we have been doing prayers for peace. And so even tonight, we will conclude with a prayer for peace for our world, and of course, specifically for the people and what's happening in Ukraine. And thank you for bringing that up. And yes, Michael Tamura is going to be on tomorrow night's after show. Thank you. Also, just want to share with everybody that Jill, whose son was murdered, that we addressed, wrote, "Thank you all. I was guided to come here tonight. I came on and the Zoom just popped on and here you all were. Thank you so very much." And she's going to order the book that was mentioned. So thank you. Jerry Grace Lynn, you've got a video to share. So I'm going to pop the spotlight on you and tell us a little bit about this video we're about to watch.
So this was an opportunity that came up in about 2006, I think. There was a news reporter from San Francisco came up to talk to me about green burial, which I did talk to him about that. But I started showing him my photo album that I had of families who decided to have a home funeral, and some of the pictures and how beautiful it looked, and the children all around that were part of the sacred ceremonies that families were doing. And I said, that's really a little more of the focus that I've had in this work. And he said, well, I think it deserves to have its own story. And I was surprised that he was willing to come back on a second trip and film again and film this little news report that they did on CBS. And it actually went around. It was on a late news report, but still it got out there, and a lot of people found out about us through that. So let me see if I can put that on.
When her father died at home, a back room became the funeral parlor. No question in our minds that we were going to keep him here, take care of him, have the memorial here. And this Bay Area woman helped set it up. I call myself a death midwife. A simple and less expensive way to honor loved ones. My father looked regal in his death. Do-it-yourself funerals, tonight at 11 on CBS 5. When a loved one dies, days, we may suddenly find ourselves turning to mortuaries and undertakers for help. But some people say there is a simpler, cheaper way to take care of our dearly departed, if you're willing to do it yourself. Reporter Mike Sugarman says it's called a home funeral. And I must warn you, the story includes pictures of corpses. So this is the room that Fred lived in for the last 3 months of his life.
Suzette Burroughs says her father, Fred, had a good long life.
This is his second wife, Nikki, here.
She cared for him in the back room of her Sebastopol house. They talked about what to do when the end came.
No question in our minds that we were going to keep him here, take care of him, have the memorial here, and have everybody who wanted to come by and see him.
So when Fred died, that same back room became his funeral parlor. And over the next 3 days, Suzette was able to be both his grieving daughter and his funeral director. She had help.
I call myself a death midwife.
Jerry Lyons shows people how to do it themselves. Everything from arranging the death certificate to preserving the body with dry ice.
They don't have to embalm. They don't have to buy an expensive casket. There's no reason why, if we care for somebody in our lifetime, that we suddenly have to give their body away to strangers. This is a picture of my friend Carolyn, who died.
Lyons used to be afraid of death. But 12 years ago, her friend died suddenly and left instructions. She wanted close friends to dispose of her body.
I don't know which was more shocking, her death or finding out that suddenly we were going to be bringing her body home and caring for her there. None of us knew it was legal. We didn't have any idea you could do this.
Instead of being creeped out by the body, Jerry says she felt a surprising sense of peace. Since then, she's helped with nearly 300 home funerals.
And she came here immediately, told us what we could and couldn't do, and we washed his entire body together, and I shaved him. He never smelled. We put coins on his eyes, and we put a bandana around his head so his mouth would stay closed, and we put his hands in position, and then the next morning, that's the way he was, and we were able to take these things off because he had kind of gone into rigor mortis in that shape. People that were absolutely horrified at the thought of going into the room went in and came out feeling so relieved. I mean, my father looked regal in his death.
Even the grandchildren were allowed to participate.
They knew he was dead, and they just walked in, and they weren't taught fear. And I think we're so fearful of death because we want to avoid it as much as possible.
And if you think being a death midwife is a sad business...
People ask me all the time, isn't that a depressing job that you do? Actually, I find it so rewarding.
Jerry Lyons says she no longer fears death and is gratified to share her sense of peace with grieving families. They also save thousands of dollars.
More pictures of him.
But for Suzette, it wasn't about the money.
Having the memorial here, dressing his body, all of that really helped me with the transition of losing my father. And it was a very fulfilling, gratifying experience.
Mike Sugarman, CBS 5 Eyewitness News.
And Jerry Lyons is training more people to become death midwives. For more information about home funerals, you can go to cbs5.com.
Oh, thanks for showing that. That was great. We've got some enthusiastic coming from Deborah and from Trish. Thank you. I think Sarah Grace, since we just saw what you did, I'm going to go to your website. And even though we're not completed, we've still got quite a bit of time left on our show. I am going to your website, and tell us about Final Passages and all that you offer. And for people watching at home, the URL is finalpassages.org. Finalpassages.org. So go there and definitely sign up for her newsletter. And my gosh, there's a lot that you're doing. Tell us more about all that you offer.
Well, I started in the year 2000. I started a 3-tiered educational program called Honoring Life's Final Passage.
Terry Grace, your audio's got in low for some reason. So
okay, yeah, Mark just turned it up. Sorry, is that better?
No, you're still low. But we give thanks to Mark. Thank you, Mark, for.
Wow, I guess I'll just talk louder.
Yeah, just talk a little bit louder.
Yeah, so in 2000 I started a 3-tiered educational program called Honoring Life's Final Passage. Level 1, we teach about conscious dying, as you can see, death doula and midwifery care and practice. And then in level 2, we teach about being a home funeral guide like I am, or a death doula, and about green burial options, alkaline hydrolysis, recompose, all the new things coming besides green burial. And then in our level 3, we teach people, we go beyond that. We go to deeper levels of all of those. And we have people actually do a role model practice of caring for somebody at their own home. Just a model, like their maid and friends, and bring them together. And we have many, many guest speakers in our level 3 to teach us all kinds of aspects of death, including grief. So we bring grief in on that 3rd level. We're also starting a monthly educational series called Embracing End of Life, and that starts April 21st, and it's going to be the 3rd Thursday of every month. And we're starting out with 2 guest speakers, Laura Musselman and Lori Goldwyn, and they're going to be talking to us about MAID, Medical Aid in Dying, and VSED, voluntary stopping eating and drinking. So for people who want to learn more about those options, and it's free, so that you can just go to our website, and soon, in another week, we'll probably have our registration for that up, and we're very excited about that. So every month we'll have a different topic and different guest presenters. And so, yeah, we have a lot going on, and we're pretty excited about that. We have a whole core council of people in our town, here and beyond, that help us work together. So, that saying, it takes a village to help people go through life. It takes a village, especially around somebody dying and their death. People really need help at that time more than ever. So,
Well, thank you.
I do have a question. What is it? Because the interviewer in me comes out, and it's such a fascinating topic, and I think it's really great to have people understand and know about it. And can you explain, like, the legal part of it? I'm sure people ask you, how is it legal, et cetera, et cetera. And could you demystify that part for us?
So in the state of California, well, in all states, it is legal for people to wash the body of their own loved one after they die. It's not always easy if they're not home. However, people don't realize a lot of times that they can ask, even if they die in a hospital, if the family can come into the room and give them a sacred bathing ritual. And a lot of hospitals will allow that. In the state of California, where I live, it's completely legal for a family to carry out all their own arrangements. So not only the sacred blessing at home, but they can file their own death certificates. They can then drive the person to the crematorium or cemetery of their choice. It's not so easy to do home burial here, but some families have already established old pioneer cemeteries on their land, and they can continue on. But they get to participate to the end. They'll, whether it's witnessing the cremation, watching the box go in. When my mom died, we helped push the box into the chamber, and as we were putting little stickers on the side of her casket. And then we also came back and watched the sweeping of the bones and ashes. And I got to take some of the bones home with me that I wanted to before they were all put into the cremulator. And then, for burial, people often will lower somebody who's just being buried in wrapped in a beautiful shroud, or in a simple pine box, or even a cardboard decorated box by the family. and then they'll fill in the grave with the shovels and the dirt. And so no grave liners, no embalming, no precious wood caskets put in the ground, no or steel caskets, none of those things. So it's just it's caring for the earth as much as it is caring for our loved ones. We're going back to the old ways, the old traditions of this country.
That is amazing. It's really incredible, especially that you help someone with all of the business of death and not make it so disconnected. That's such a difficult experience for someone who's grieving, and just right after the loss of a loved one to have to go into the business of it with the certificate and the filing and all of that. It's so insensitive. So what a wonderful service.
Thank you. It tends to get compartmentalized, I guess, when the gurney shows up at the door right after somebody dies, a couple hours later, and the body is gone, and people feel helpless and sad.
Loss,
the great loss. But there's no ritual to help move them through some of that deepest grief. And so by keeping the person there and creating whatever ceremony they do, from the simplest to very elaborate, and they can have as many ceremonies as they want over the next few days. Inviting different people in and doing different things, and music and all kinds of things. People, they feel the love in the room. It raises their energy up, and they feel joyful even from time to time. I mean, there's a whole roller coaster of emotions, but the joy is brought in as well. So,
thank you.
Well, since we've got Lisa right here, and thank you, Lisa, for jumping in. It's a blessing to have such an amazing co-host jumping in, helping us out here. So thank you.
My naturally curious mind, I have a lot of questions, but
absolutely
thank you for sharing that.
And I've listened to you too, Lisa, many, many times interview people. So we have Gaia, and
yes. Oh, great.
Love you.
Great.
Love you.
Well, while we've got Lisa here, then I'm going to go to your website, Lisa, and have you share a little bit, because you do a whole other wonderful thing. Of course, most of us know you from the Aware Show because you've been doing it for so long, but you've got a wonderful, wonderful thing that you offer, which I want people to know about. First off, her main URL is theawareshow.com. So I want to encourage everybody to go to theawareshow.com. But please tell us about the story coaching work that you do.
Yes, it is one of the things that I've been doing as a broadcaster for 20 years is illuminating people's stories. And my interview style is very much like that. It's a story. It's a storytelling hour. And I never go through someone's bio when I'm interviewing them. I go through their story. And most likely their story and your story is more powerful than a bio anyway, because once you really get in touch with your true story, it wakes you up to who you are, and then it deepens your purpose, and then it helps you carry that story out and impact generations to come. And I just find everything around us is story, from how countries are formed and religions and family trees and even media and commercials. Everywhere you look, a story is told. And when you get in touch with yours, it allows you to have enormous amount of freedom in your life from the pain. You're no longer coming from the pain of your story, you're coming from the teaching of your story. And that is a very empowered and purposeful way to live. So I help people discover that story, that origin story, and learn to teach from it.
Now, do you do that one-on-one, or are they overall classes that you teach?
Yes, I do one-on-ones, and that website there will get you to the one-on-one coaching. And also then I do masterminds where we get together in groups of 5 and 6, and we turn the stories into your purpose in life. And if it's through podcasting or book writing or coaching or whatever it is, we turn it into how you want to express it in the world. So beautiful. I just feel endless. It's It's endlessly gratifying to watch people wake up to their stories.
Mm. Well, thank you so much for both those things. Obviously, for all that you do on the first show, but helping people get in touch with the story. So, I'm going to ask you to share a story of someone that you've helped and how getting them in touch with their story transformed their life.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. The one that comes to mind is a woman by the name of Demerits. Demerits was raised in a very challenging environment on food stamps and she was the oldest child. And when she was 7, her mom sent her to the store with the food stamps to get the staples of the bread and the milk for the family. And she got to the checkout counter and she had somehow lost the stamps. And at that moment in her 7-year-old life, she made a commitment to herself that she would never be in that situation again at 7. And she had to go home without the food. And what she felt there imprinted her body to never do that again. So she then committed herself to education and learning as much as she could. And she educated herself and all the way through college and graduated with honors in college. And she became back in the same situation where she was with children and again in a situation where she couldn't afford food for her family. And so she sought the help of a wonderful woman who was a nun. She went to a place where she found a sister, and that sister committed herself to finding and raising enough money to keep Demerits and her 2 children in their home. And Demerits recommitted herself at that moment as an adult. I will never, ever be in this situation again. And so she, for the rest of her life, has been repaying this sister with helping and coaching other women in that position, out of that position, and helping empower women. So she lives every day from that story. When she really committed herself to living from her story, she's able to help people, and her life is totally, completely taken off. She has an incredibly thriving coaching practice, 2 very healthy daughters that she's raised, and she's just an absolutely beautiful human being. It's just a
beautiful story. Yeah. Well, thank you for the great work that you do. And I always enjoy having a chance to connect with you, Lisa. Thank
you too,
so much.
Scott. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do it again. Let's do it again
Okay.
soon. I'm going to try going to Starwolf, and hopefully your internet's going to be behaving, because there is a question that came in from Gabriel watching on Unify. He asked, thanks for sharing. When I do pranayama or shamanic breathing, I feel that my soul begins to leave my body, but I can't go too far with the experience because I kind of fear dying or not coming back. Wondering if you have anything to say about that or could recommend anything. And
Well, I think that whenever we breathe or do anything that's going to take us out of our everyday ordinary consciousness, there's automatically some fear that comes up when we start to experience an altered state. If we start to feel like, if we start to have visions, it's not uncommon when people start to do shamanic breath work that they release basically the DMT in their brain. They get all kinds of oxytocin and serotonin and there's like 101 chemicals that are released in that kind of, in the shamanic breath work, at least. And when that happens, you go into an altered state. When we go into, it says, oh boy, that's fun. Let's go into an altered state. Except going into an altered state can make you feel like that you're doing what? Losing control. And you are. Your ego is moving out of the way. And I call it your shamanic consciousness or your shaman within or your wisdom keeper, whatever it might be. That part of you comes on board and it's fine with what it's experiencing. But depending on your ego and your relationship to death, with the topic we're talking about, and the fear of dying or letting go, basically the fear of changing can really cause a person to be too afraid to go into the altered state. But if we can trust the process and trust that we're not going to go any place, trust our souls. We've talked a lot about soul today. you know, whether you want to call it the soul or the oversoul or a higher self or spirit or your shaman within, it doesn't matter what you call it. If we can trust that there's something else in addition to our everyday, ordinary consciousness that exists simultaneously with that part of us that can, you know, put the key in the car, step on the gas, stop at the stoplight. We want to keep that part. But that's not the part, at least for me, that I want to be in charge of my soul and my choices and decisions about my life. So it's a matter of beginning to be comfortable with doing altered states. You know, and we're in altered states when we watch movies, we're in altered states when we dance, we're in altered states when we make love, we're in altered states with certain foods. It's natural to be in altered states. So letting go of some of the fear of that and allowing ourselves to have these different experiences and trusting the process is a way to reach different states of consciousness. And in those different states of consciousness, there's answers and directions and synchronicities and ahas and all kinds of things that are waiting for us when we can release a little bit and let go. Scott, one of the things I wanted to tell you that one of my friends and students and graduates is on here, Sandy, and she has placed in, if you see under Sandy Roberts, she has placed on there the offering of the link to the shamanicbreathwork.org Shamanic Breathwork book ceremony. Okay, so that was in the chat, and you can click onto that link that she has for you, and with that link, you can go to a breathwork journey and take that journey. We just created that recently to go into a new book that I have out on shamanic breathwork. And so this is a giveaway to everyone that's on this program, that if you want to take the shamanic breathwork journey, you can click on that link, and it will, not right now, but you can click on that link, or you can copy that link is what would probably be the better thing to do. And then when you have some space and time to take a deep inner journey and create your surroundings around that for yourself, then you can do that journey on your own. So this is just the website, and this is Venus Rising Association for Transformation and University. And hopefully you can hear me okay. But Venus Rising Association for Transformation and University, I birthed 26 years ago, and I had birthed shamanic breathwork 30 years ago. And I've been training and teaching people, facilitators, and we've taken it into treatment centers, to mental health centers, all around the country and around the world. And we have taught and trained thousands of people to become shamanic breathwork practitioners, facilitators. We also are an ordainment program. We ordain people. Grace, I would love to give you an honorary, I know you probably have a shamanic minister's ordainment. You certainly deserve it. And but people come through our programs and learn how to hold space shamanically for all kinds of life and death initiations. And of course, one of the biggest initiations is just to live our lives and to truly be true to who it is that we are. I think that compared to being born and compared to actually dying and leaving, that living is probably much harder. And
True.
I think that living and fully being who we are and allowing people to think whatever they need to think about burying people in your backyard, you know, or, you know, having died and come back to life the way Lisa did, or, you know, being a death doula, you know, all those different things that people can have opinions about, you know.
Right.
To fully live our lives and be who it is that we are is probably the scariest and the most rewarding thing that we can do.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being with us. And again, shamanicbreathwork.org if people can get more information. And to wrap up, we want to hear from Deborah one more time, and I'm going to bring on her girlfriend Trish to tell us all about how we can get more of Deborah.
Well, I'm going to let her talk a little bit about what she does and how she does it. And again, just the space that she holds and how she compassionately shows up is really epically profound. Can you please tell us what a death doula does?
Oh man. Well, to learn more about Death Doulas, my offering that I have out right now is a 6-talk series. And it's just kind of like an intro to Death Doulas. So if you're interested in that, the next series starts April 20th. It'll be over Zoom. Please write me at deathtransitions@gmail.com. So, and there I'll explain further what a death doula is. I really present myself as a death doula that works with the living and dying. I'm a big advocate of everyone working on their end of life plans now when they're healthy, before there's a diagnosis. The work when you don't have a diagnosis is not only a way to integrate a relationship with your coming death, but it's so much easier to sit and work through those papers and the idea of death plans and legacy projects when you're not actually sick. So, that's the very beginning stages of where a death doula might work with someone healthy or ill. And then, of course, I'm a death doula, and that is dependent on the relationship, who's calling, and what their needs are. But we provide practical, emotional, spiritual support. Some death doulas have areas of expertise that they concentrate on. Maybe it's just the vigil itself versus, the advocacy and holding someone through the dying process. And in my work as a minister, I've been a celebrant for funerals and a planner of memorials. And I've gotten really creative over the last couple of years in developing some sort of online memorials that we all needed for the people that have passed over the last couple of years before we could gather. And currently, I am really holding grief for a lot of people. And as I said, I have a love affair with grief. So if anyone needs a grief companion, I am there for you. I love to talk all things death, dying, and grief. So that is deathtransitions@gmail.com. And I have to do a special shout out to Jerry Grace. Jerry, I got to study with you on Maui with Doorway into Light. And we got to spend a day with you about how to care for our body or someone who has passed. And I did not realize that I would be taking those tools to help my friend David die so quickly, but instinctually, the tools that you gave us for the coins and the jaw and let's have a sacred bathing ceremony, they were just there. And it was because of you that I was able to rest on those tools so fully. And anyone who's interested in home funerals, I'm a big advocate of taking down the big funeral industry, because this is such an important part of integrating our grief and having that love for someone. So thank you, Jerry, and thank you, everyone. I so love being here.
I have one last question for you, Deborah, about kind of what you're advocating for in the hospice community that you're in right now.
Well, thank you. So I've been speaking to hospice palliative care organizations as of late and getting them to understand what death doulas provide. And I've come up against a lot of resistance, as most death doulas have. They think that we take away from hospice and palliative care, and that is no way the truth. We work in tandem with them, we complement them, and we backfill areas of need depending on the quality of hospice your loved one may be at. So I recently got to speak to a volunteer base at a nonprofit hospice and palliative care, and I've been asked to speak to the board recently. So I hope I do my death doula brethren well and present, because what we're hoping to get a little more recognized, and that hospices will bring us on as either volunteers or understand the role that we play in helping families when someone is ill.
Yes, more humane death, please, humane.
I'm going to bring on all of our guests just so we can see them one more time, and remind everybody that this is the first of 3 shows this weekend. And tomorrow night, we've got some really beautiful presenters. We've got Gary Malkin, who won a Grammy Award for his CD on Graceful Passages, which is music to play and listen to while dealing with this theme. Daniel Brinkley, an old friend of mine. Daniel and I have been buddies for 30 years, and he's amazing. He, of course, wrote the best-selling book, Saved by the Light. They made a movie about it, and he's amazing. He's also worked in hospice and has helped over 40,000 people deal with death. He's amazing. Celestine Starr is going to be with us. My co-host is the great Christian Hoffman, who will be playing beautiful music. And we have a gentleman coming all the way from the Himalayas. He's a doctor who has dedicated his life to going into rural areas and providing both physical and spiritual support to people as they prepare to die. And he's coming all the way from India, from the Himalayas. So that's going to be tomorrow night. And then on Sunday morning for our Sacred Sunday show, we've got Suzanne Kelly, who is kind of probably the world's foremost authority or writer about green burials. And we have another death doula joining us. So it's going to be a beautiful weekend. So please join us. And I want to turn it over to Omashar, who has been somebody who just provides beautiful, beautiful music. We love Omashar. And ironically, Omashar has been playing music for us a lot recently, often to close out our shows. And Omashar, your mother right now, you're going through an experience with your mother as she's preparing to pass, yeah?
Yes, indeed. Let me just change this. So you can hear me good?
Yes, now we can.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's a trip. I've been for 2 years grieving the loss of my 14-year young daughter who's still alive, but that's another story. And then just in the last few months, my mom has decided to kind of get ready to leave the planet. And so on Sunday, I'm going to fly over to England and be with her and hold her hand. And I have such a faith in life as being spirit flowing through everything that it doesn't faze me at all. And it's just a little sad that I talk with her and about my experiences of my spirit, and that I know that the moment she leaves her body, she's going to tap on my shoulder and I'm going to say, "I told you so." And it's just interesting. And I was there a few months ago, and she said to me, "Don't talk to me about this anymore." She just wanted to shut her mind off and be in her atheist devoutness. And anyway, that's enough talk. So I'm going to sing a song that is called "One Heart, One Mind, One Soul," and it's about moving along in life, and it's a communication from divine feminine again to us humans. And so here we go. Or shall I say, there we go. Hear me? Sometimes it feels so hard to move along, saying goodbye to yesterday. Take heart, my friends, there is a new song, bringing us back to our homelands. When something troubles you, just call up my name. I'm the one who loves you. Be still within. Hear what I say. Give me the chance to be with you. We are one heart, one mind, one soul, working together to heal, and there are no walls between us now. It's a celebration of union. down and on your own. Take a look around. I am in everything. Give me your burden, walk into my arms. I will lift you up, I will hold you. We are one heart, one mind, one soul, working together to heal. And there are no walls between us now. It's a celebration of union. We are the ones who hear the new voice calling us home to freedom. Fear not, my friends, this is a new place full of new joys and happiness. Yes, we are one heart, one mind, one soul, working together to heal. And there are no walls between us now. It's a celebration of union. And puppies.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Oh my gosh.
It's always fun, and it's always a trip playing in one's studio.
Well, thank you. It's your blessing. And I'm bringing in all of our people one last time so you can twinkle them. Jury Grace Lyons, tell it, is this your partner? We appreciate his support. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being with us. And we hopefully will see you all tomorrow night and again on Sunday morning. God's blessings, everybody. Have a